Introducing our next speaker is Bill McCloskey from City of Prince George.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Bill McCloskey. I'm IT manager for the City of Prince George. If you're from outside the province of British Columbia, or perhaps you live in the Lower Mainland, you may have never heard of Prince George. So Prince George is approximately in the center of the province and is known as BC's northern capital, or at least that's what we call ourselves. So we're about a 1-hour flight from Prince George to Vancouver, or about a 7-hour drive, depending on the route. We're home to the University of Northern British Columbia, which was ranked Canada's best small university by Maclean's magazine in 2022. We don't talk about the other years. We're also home to the University Hospital of Northern British Columbia and the BC Cancer Centre for the North. So Prince George is the administrative hub for the Northern Health Authority, which covers a geographic area approximately the size of France, but probably has less people than, say, Metro Town Mall on a Saturday. In terms of population, the city has about 77,000 residents. We have about 650 staff, and we have 20 IT staff in our department. So our IT department is known for its excellent customer service, our extensive business knowledge and technical skills, and the ability to wear shorts in any weather situation. So, all right, so the problem. Like many of you, I'm sure every year you develop an annual work plan. However, by the end of the year, what we found is that we haven't completed the majority of the projects that we actually planned. In fact, over several years, we've tracked our project completion rates, and we determined we complete approximately 44% of all the projects that we plan in a given year. So in 2021, the disruption of the pandemic contributed to the overall lower average, but even if you exclude that year, our average project completion rate sits at around 47%. So these low project completion rates often result in capital funds sitting there idle for long periods of time or being carried forward over to the next year. As well, seeing a large list of projects that needs attention is likely having an impact on the performance and well-being of our staff. So when we try to frame the causes of these low project completion rates, we looked at several factors. So several of these are lack of funding to complete the project. So that's not an issue because lack of funding, typically at the end of every year, we have a sizable amount that's left unspent. So it's not because we don't have enough money to do the projects. Lack of project management, skills or training or experience, also not really a factor as many of our IT staff have project management experience, project management training. Loss of key personnel. So since 2015, we've lost some senior roles, but the majority of our staff that we've had turnover in have been in the administrative junior levels, entry-level positions. Lack of resources or commitment in business areas. While this is true for many of the business projects, the majority of our projects are actually IT driven, and they're not driven by the business. So we asked the question to ourselves, do we have a capacity problem that hinders us from completing these projects within a certain time frame? Are we overreaching? That type of thing. So we tried to approach this from a very systematic point of view. So starting in 2021, we developed an approach to carefully measure and monitor our capacity. Previous to that, we dabbled a little bit in estimating our capacity, but we put more effort in determining what our capacity for projects requested in 2021 that will be started to execute in 2022. So at the start of this journey, in order to address this problem for low completion rates, we're still fine-tuning the process, but this is how we did it. First, for each staff member that was a project manager or project member, We started with identifying the total number of available hours per year for that person. So this works out to 1,950 hours per year. We took away the stat holidays. We subtracted any kind of vacation entitlements for those staff members. We then utilized leave reports and leave averages, and we subtracted those leaves, such as sick and other personal time off. We then subtracted estimated hours that we'd use, that we throw at staff for training and professional development. And then the big one is that we subtracted all those activities that keep existing systems running and secure and city staff productive. So the term we use is keep the lights on, or KPLO. So that leaves approximately 966 hours or 26 weeks to complete projects. So these projects could be anything from implementing new security services, performing major upgrades, replacing end-of-life technology, or delivering digital transformation projects. So our first step was to get this data into our project portfolio management system known as PlanView Adaptive. So using Adaptive, we first started entering all these vacations and stats, classified them as non-working time. We then estimated the hours to keep the lights on activity for each IT work group for the year, and these IT work groups entered tasks, estimated the work hours for each of those tasks. You can see all the days, the duration, the planned work effort, that kind of thing. Oh, sorry, apologies. So once all the KTL hours were entered, we then started going through the list of project requests. So these project requests come in various ways, and we use a weighted scoring system as one tool to determine a project's priority. Once the project's reviewed and added to the tentative work plan, we assign project members, add the tasks, get the estimated work hours for the tasks. So in addition, we usually have a number of projects that we carry forward from the previous year. We look at these projects, update the tasks, update the work hour estimates. So as we start to allocate time to these projects and these projects' tasks, we start to review the available versus allocated hours to identify where and when we will hit capacity issues. So in this example, we've identified significant capacity issues that would occur for this staff member over a certain time frame. So as mentioned previously, the majority of these projects are IT. So for the most part, we can adjust the project schedule to address this capacity concern. So following this approach, we eventually identify capacity constraints and when, and this triggers us to stop adding projects to the staff member who we're forecasting will have capacity constraints. This doesn't mean the project doesn't proceed, it just means that we're not going to assign it to that person. So eventually, we identify when we have capacity constraints for every project resource, and we stop looking at other requested projects. So I just want to point out one quick edit I did before in the afternoon, is after Jazz mentioned that he was going to steal talent, I quickly redacted everyone's names. So as mentioned, this is a journey. And during this journey, we identified challenges, and some of those challenges include our capacity planning for the coming year typically isn't fully finalized by the time we have to submit our funding requests. So this creates risk where we're actually asking for too much money or too little. Staff leaves. Per the collective agreement, unionized staff actually aren't required to submit their vacation requests until April 1. So while we know how much vacation they have, we're not sure when it's going to occur for what duration. So those types of leaves can typically throw off a carefully planned project. And unplanned leaves can come out of nowhere, and that also can affect it, but obviously back to life. So even when we forecast a capacity issue, we sometimes encounter must-do projects where only one staff member is capable of performing the work, or that the work must be started and completed by a certain time frame. There's an upside to this, what I'll get to in the next slide. The other challenge at this time is that estimating work is more art than science. So one option to get better understanding of how we spend our time is to utilize time tracking. However, we haven't implemented that as we just don't feel the effort is worth the value. And lastly, when we think of capacity, I think we tend to overestimate how much spare capacity we have. So I call this dark matter capacity because once we do the math and we prove capacity exists, it's hard to actually find it. So the outcomes. So, despite these challenges, since starting this process, we've seen the following outcomes. We use capacity planning to reduce the number of projects that we work on. Using this approach, we've used capacity planning to plan and schedule approximately 84 projects, which represents about a 57% decrease over our historical 7-year average. So for planned projects, we're now able to identify potential capacity issues and use that information to tweak and improve our scheduling. I like to think that this also enables us as leaders to reduce the likelihood of burning out our staff when they're overburdened with too many projects. For parachute projects, or projects that we call that come out of nowhere, we have data supporting if or when we can take on another project. So many times we've been able to say no or not yet because we just don't have the available capacity to take those on. And finally, we're developing some objective data about our capacity. So this data can be used to support business cases for additional resources, address gaps in specialized skills, revise where we can allocate our staff time and responsibilities. And right there. And that's it. So thank you for your time. I'm available to take any questions.
First, I'll ask a fail-safe question, or fail-fast question.
I knew that was coming. I don't have a good response for that. I outlined a number of challenges, and each of those challenges we try and address. But yeah, there's a lot of unpredictability in trying to manage capacity for sure.
Hi, Bill. I have a question like I wonder how do you actually track the actual time that each of your staff spend on each project? Like, do you guys do that? Like, do you guys use your help desk system or some other sort of method?
Yeah, definitely, especially on KTLL hours, which consume a ton of our time. We do have the ability to see number of tickets people are assigned, get that data and use it to do estimates. It's not, like I mentioned, it's more art than science, so it's not exact, but it gives us that ability to start somewhere. And through discussions with the staff, we'll be able to fine tune that over time. We have some staff that are actually quite exceptional at tracking their time, and their projects are, we do a great job of planning, scheduling, and actually hitting our targets. One thing I should mention that I didn't mention in the presentation is the projects that we do start, we're great at it. We get it done on time, we get it done on budget. It's just that we just have too many projects, and we're using capacity planning to make sure that we only schedule the projects according to our available capacity.
I'm interested to know how you prioritize your projects, because sometimes projects come that are must-haves, must-dos, might come from elected officials. So how do you manage to prioritize based on not only estimates against actuals, but also about the perceived importance from to interested parties?
Yeah, that's almost a whole other presentation unto itself, but we're using as just one of our tools, because like you said, we can get dictated to do a project no matter what our priorities are internally. So we use a calculated priority method, and we take in factors like alignment with city strategic plan, does it support our cybersecurity initiatives, that type of thing. We look at those weightings for each of those every year, and we adjust them. So for example, cybersecurity is huge right now in the city of Prince George, and we're focused heavily on that. So any project that supports our cybersecurity gets bumped up in priority automatically.
When you see the number of projects that you had and then now have decreased, does that make you look at, like, could you grow now when you see that? When you see how many less projects you're taking on that could be coming, like, do you think you could grow the number of staff? Like, do you need more staff when you see that? Like, is that what that number says?
I think what it's highlighted is that there's certain roles that we definitely need more, either transform other people's roles to support or roles where we've got some, some skills or experience gaps. I don't think it necessarily means we need more people, but maybe we need to revise how we're organized a little bit. Now that said, it could support a case to get more staff, and it's very difficult to go and ask for more staff if you don't have any data supporting it. They don't just accept it when you say, I need more people. So having that data supporting it and showing that we actually have capacity issues, I think goes a long way.
Billy, I think you mentioned that your staff is generally, and your department's generally well regarded internally. And I suspect that's probably because you're prioritizing your external commitments versus IT commitments. Has this initiative had any impact on your internal customer satisfaction?
Most of our measurements for internal customer satisfaction come a couple of different ways. It's through our tickets. We automatically send out, like, how did we do type surveys. We did an annual survey last year that measured a few of our metrics as well too in terms of customer satisfaction. One impact I wanted to mention is that, so the tool that we use is also being used by our civic operations group in utilities and some of those other areas. And so they are actually looking at what we're doing in terms of capacity planning, because you can list 100 projects and throw a bunch of money on it, but if you don't have the people to actually do it, it's not going to move forward, or it's going to be delayed and cost more money. So we're working with them to kind of, evolve the process to meet the needs of the city, not just IT.